The Black Fast. Sounds pretty intense, and that's because it is, not gonna lie. It is basically the name for the early Christian tradition of eating only one meal a day after sunset for 40 days, and that one meal consisting of no dairy products, no animal products, basically vegan. One meal a day after sunset for 40 days during the season of Lent. Lent consists of the 40 days leading up to Easter, so it's like a preparatory season. It's a penitential season where usually people will sacrifice or offer something, fast from something. And for many, many years in the early church, apparently this is what like everyone did, is this black fast where everyone ate one meal a day, vegan, at the end of the day. And that's what I did this year. Sort of, and I want to talk about it. I say sort of because I modified it a little bit, not gonna lie. I didn't actually really do the full like one meal a day vegan, in part because I lift weights every day, and I've done in the past, like 2-3 years ago, a few things. A few years ago, I went vegan for Lent, like 3 or 4 years ago, and I had it just did not work well digestively because I was trying to get enough protein to accommodate the needs I had for weight training, because I lift weights 6 days a week, and just like the protein needs, so that, because I decided to keep doing that over the season of Lent, just because it's just like really good for me. And when I don't weight train for an extended period of time, it like messes with my mental health more than my physical health. So I kept that up, but in order not to just like atrophy and lose a lot of muscle, I needed to get enough protein. And last time I tried to do that vegan, the amount of protein that you eat when you're just eating plant-based foods, it comes with a lot of fiber, and that didn't sit well with my gut. So basically I did vegan plus chicken, just like adding chicken into the meal that I had each day in order to increase the amount of protein without having a lot of extra like vegan foods, and also just made it slightly easier for me to cook, and knowing how to cook with chicken made meals simpler, so I didn't have to think about food that much. In addition to that, I'll lift weights in the morning, so it would be a long time before after I lifted until I was able to eat, so I did have a protein shake in the morning as well. So the fast wasn't as long because I had some nutrition in the morning after lifting weights. But other than that, there was a long extended period of time during the day, at least like 12 hours each day probably, that I wasn't eating. So I never ate during the day. And here's how that went for me. I actually found this to be an incredibly fruitful Lent and fast that I did, and maybe one of the most fruitful I've ever done, because I've been Catholic for all my life. I've been doing this Lent thing for literally every year of my life, and you always give up things like sweets or screen time, social media, whatever it might be. And most of those things you can, when you're fasting from them and you give them up for a period of time, you can fill that with something else. So like say, for example, that you're giving up social media for Lent, you'll have less time on social media, and that might be hard, and it's going to be hard to overcome the muscle memory of getting on your phone, and you're going to maybe ache for it at some time, but you can fill that with other things. You can do a lot of other things to satisfy the craving that you have for social media. Whereas if you're just not eating, you're going to have a biological craving for food, and not just types of food. With sweets, same thing with sweets. If you just gave up sweets, then you can still eat other food and you will be satisfied. It's just saying no to the craving for sweets. When it's just you can't eat and you have to wait until the end of the day to eat, you can't do anything to satisfy that craving. You're just going to be hungry. And that's kind of what I was able to experience and enter into over the last 40 days of just long days where I'd get, into the afternoon and into the evening. And it's I'm hungry and I'm not going to be able to eat for another few hours. And I can't satisfy that. So all I can do is embrace it and offer it up. And that, I think, really, I made a video about this a few weeks ago. That's really the spirit of a fast. I think that's the place we're supposed to be able to get to in a fast, is not only to endure it and to fill it up with other things, but to be able to embrace it and to joyfully offer up this penance or this sacrifice that I'm to embrace the suck a little bit, this is hard. I'm doing a hard thing. I can't really do anything about it except embrace it and enter into this place where like I now know suffering and can endure suffering better, and to offer that up for the sake of someone else, to like make that a prayer and say, Lord, I offer you this suffering for the sake of someone else as well. It's like make it prayerful. So just like spiritually, it was really fruitful. It felt to me like one of the maybe the first times I've actually truly fasted during Lent. Like it felt very hard, but because of that, and I think if I would have done this a few years ago, it would not have been as fruitful, and maybe some amount of spiritual maturity comes with this to be able to not just like, because there's a few things. Maybe I'll get into some of the practicals of like how I made this work and like what happened to me over the course of the last 40 days. Practical level of how to make this work for you if you're thinking about like, would you do this? Because I think I would recommend this for just like a period of time, and maybe for Lent. I think Lent is a great time to do it coming up next year, or just for like a small period of time to do something like this. I think I would recommend it. But to be able to do it well, I think you need to, one, very practically just drink lots of water. Two, I think is to be relatively busy so you don't think about it as much. But three is just like to not just ache and long for food. Like if you are going through the fast and just enduring it, and again, I made a video on this before, but if you're just enduring it, like I can't wait until I can eat, then you're just going to be craving and you're going to overeat. And then I've done this in the past where it's become like binge eating when I can finally eat. And that's not actually the goal. The goal is to have some amount of moderation in the time when we do eat. So to be able to say just like, nope, I can't eat right now. And that's okay. And when I do eat, I'm not going to go crazy. I'm just going to eat until I'm satisfied. And that was a huge thing for me. Like towards the beginning, I ate bigger meals because it was like, oh shoot, I can finally eat. But as the time went on, it's like, no, the spirit of this kind of is that like when it's time for me to eat, I'm not going to overeat. I'm just going to eat until I'm satisfied. Now, practically what did end up happening is because like, again, like I said, I lift weights 6 days a week. I'm a pretty active guy. So I require a lot of calories on a day-to-day to not lose weight. So I did lose like 15 to 20 pounds over the course of the season of Lent. But part of that for me too was just this sort of like detachment from, because it wasn't optimized nutrition. Like I wasn't doing intentional like bodybuilding style diet to try to get shredded. It was like, I understand that I'm probably not going to get enough protein to spare the muscle that I'm probably going to end up atrophying and losing over the course of this time. So it's some detachment from like my looks as well, of like, I know I'm going to lose some muscle, and I know that I did. I lost some strength, lost some muscle over the course of the 40 days because I just wasn't getting proper nutrition, and I definitely wasn't getting enough calories. So yeah, I like lost a fair amount of weight, and it got sort of uncomfortable towards the end. I'll say it a million times, Lent is not a diet. Like the point is not like, I'm gonna just like fast during Lent so I can get shredded and look the best shape of my life. No, like if I wanted to get in the best shape of my life, I would have done my nutrition much differently. And I just like, this was not ideal nutrition to get in the best shape of my life. So part of it was just a detachment from that. Like that wasn't the focus, but that was some of the effect. I will also say, surprisingly, just like a few other random things, like my digestion was actually better than it had been before, which is a very interesting thing to me. No idea why. And I will also say that my energy levels towards the beginning, like just your body adapting to, I'm not eating during the day. Like I was dog tired by the end of the day, towards the beginning. But by the end, I was actually feeling really good. Like my focus levels and just like mental clarity, but also just like I had enough energy. Like there were certain days where I wouldn't go to the gym in the morning, and I would go in the evening, and I would actually have like plenty of energy by the end of the day, even though I hadn't eaten all day, which I think is important to note, just because like, when you talk about like I didn't eat all day and I'm like barely eating, I think I got this a lot from people who I would tell about this, just like, aren't you dying? Like doesn't it feel like you got zero energy? You got to eat. But the fact of the matter is, like the human body, like we can fast, we can go without food for a fair amount of time. And I think that sometimes we're just afraid, and we need to. I will actually say this, because then at the end, in like the Triduum, in the last few days, I didn't eat. Like there's the great fast between Holy Thursday and then the Easter Vigil on Saturday. So for like 50, 60 hours. There's like no food at all. And I've done that a few times now. And the first time that I did it years ago, it was like, man, I feel like I'm going to pass out because my body wasn't used to an extended period of fasting. But now that I've done it a bunch of times, my body's become kind of attuned to, adapted to the idea of like, I can make it for a number of hours without food. So part of this is just adapting your body to it. But eventually, like your body can go for a fair amount of time without food. Basically, you just get to meal times, like regular meal times, and your body will just like have intense cravings because it just knows that this is when you usually eat. But then if you can make it through that like 15, 20, 30 minutes where you're just like very hungry, the hunger cues kind of just go away and you feel pretty normal. So if you can fall into that rhythm, that routine, then it's not that hard to make it through a period of extended fasting. So for me, I think this was actually really good. And what I will leave this with is kind of just like, this was a really hard thing. I remember feeling at the beginning of Lent, like, man, one meal a day sounds incredibly difficult and I don't know if I can do it. And I just want to make the encouragement, I've been thinking about this over the last 40 days, like this is one of the fruits of it for me, of like, I think that we need to, not just like we should, but I think we need to do things sometimes that seem impossible. Things that we don't think we can accomplish, just to put ourselves in the position to see if we can do it. Because if we don't, if we only operate within the confines of what we think our limitations are, then we will never push past our limits. We'll never see how much we can accomplish. But you can accomplish much more than you probably believe that you can. If you put yourself in a position to challenge yourself, to push past your limits and see how much you can do, see how much you can endure. So this, for the past 40 days, was something that really challenged me in an incredibly good way. And I didn't know if I could do it, and I did. And maybe I'll do it again. It was very fruitful for me. Who knows? And I think I would recommend it with the proper like attention to your body and your personal needs and whatever. But it was a fruitful Lent for me. And now I can enjoy even more so. And this is part of the reason that we fast during Lent, is that because of all the sacrifice, because of all that we endured over the past 40 days, I can appreciate and celebrate even more the joy of the Easter season that we now enter into.